Take everything out of your wallet for a second. A few bills, a bank card, maybe a receipt you forgot was there. Now imagine handing those things to someone living 10,000 years ago. The paper would mean nothing. The plastic would be useless. Even the numbers in your bank account, every dollar you've ever earned, would simply not exist. And yet somehow the world they lived in eventually became the world you live in today. Which raises a question almost nobody stops to ask. When did humans first start using money? Most people imagine the answer begins with the first coin. A king stamps his face onto a piece of gold. People start buying things. Civilization begins. Simple. Except that's not what happened. Money is much older than coins, older than kingdoms, older than writing. In fact, the first people to use something that behaved like money had never seen a city. They had no banks, no governments, no markets, and certainly no cash. So how did they trade? To answer that, forget everything you know about buying things. Imagine waking up 15,000 years ago. You're hungry. Your family needs food before nightfall. You spend the morning gathering berries, while another member of your group catches fish from the nearby river. Someone else finds honey hidden inside a hollow tree. Nobody pays anyone. Nobody counts prices. Nobody keeps receipts. Because everyone knows each other. If you bring back berries today, someone else might share meat tomorrow. Not because you owe each other, because that's simply how the group survives. Anthropologists call this a gift economy, but that phrase can be misleading. These weren't gifts in the birthday present sense. They were relationships. Every meal created a quiet understanding. I helped you today. One day, you'll help me. No numbers, no interest, no wallets, only memory. For tens of thousands of years, this worked remarkably well. Hunter-gatherer bands were usually small, rarely more than 30 or 40 people. You knew every face, every family, every child. Trust didn't need a currency. Trust was the currency. But then, something changed. Not all at once, not everywhere. Slowly, almost invisibly, humans began meeting strangers more often. Groups traveled farther. Seasonal gatherings became larger. People encountered communities they'd never seen before. And suddenly, memory wasn't enough anymore. How do you trade with someone you've never met? Someone who doesn't know you'll repay the favor next month, or next year, or ever. Imagine you're carrying beautifully crafted stone tools. The stranger across the river has dried fish. He wants your tools. You want his food. The problem isn't deciding to trade. The problem is deciding to trust. Because once you hand over your tools, what guarantees he'll keep his promise? Nothing. That single problem became one of the biggest obstacles in human history. Long before money solved the problem of buying things, it solved the problem of trusting strangers. Archaeologists have uncovered obsidian, volcanic glass used for making razor-sharp blades, hundreds of miles from the volcanoes where it formed. The same is true for seashells discovered deep inland, far from any coastline. These weren't accidents. They were evidence of trade networks stretching across entire regions, thousands of years before coins ever existed. Somebody was exchanging goods with people they barely knew. But what exactly were they exchanging? Not money, at least not yet. Sometimes it was salt, sometimes rare shells, sometimes polished stones, sometimes beautiful beads that served no practical purpose at all. At first glance, that sounds strange. Why would anyone trade valuable food for a decorative shell? Because value has never been about usefulness alone. A diamond can't feed you. A painting can't keep you warm. Even the paper in your wallet is nearly worthless by itself. Its value comes from something much more fragile: belief. The moment enough people agree that an object represents value, it becomes valuable. Not because nature says so, because humans do. And somewhere, thousands of years before the first bank was built, before the first king minted a coin, before the first dollar, the first paycheck, or the first market, our ancestors made one of the most important decisions in history. They looked at an ordinary object and collectively agreed, this represents something more. They had just taken the first step toward inventing money. But the object they chose wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, and it wasn't even metal. It was something far more surprising. The first money wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, it wasn't even metal. In different parts of the world, it was completely different things. On tiny Pacific islands, people used enormous stone discs called rye stones. Some were so large they couldn't even be moved. Ownership changed hands without the stone ever leaving its place. In Africa, people traded iron bars. In China, cowrie shells became so valuable they were copied in bronze. Across North America, wampum beads carried both cultural and economic value. And in parts of ancient Europe, salt was so important that it was sometimes exchanged almost like currency. None of these objects looked alike, yet they all shared something surprisingly simple. People trusted them. That's the only requirement money has ever had. It doesn't have to be shiny. It doesn't have to be rare. It doesn't even have to exist physically. It only has to solve one problem. Can everyone agree this has value? For thousands of years, that answer depended entirely on local communities. A shell might be valuable in one village and completely worthless in the next. Trade worked, but only on a small scale. Then civilization arrived. Around 5,000 years ago, cities began growing across Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and later China. For the first time in history, thousands of strangers lived together. Farmers, builders, potters, soldiers, merchants. People who had never met each other still needed to exchange goods every single day. The old system of memory no longer worked. You couldn't remember every favor. You couldn't personally know everyone you traded with. Human society had grown too large. So instead of trusting people, people began trusting symbols. Long before coins appeared, temples and palaces started keeping detailed records of grain, livestock, and labor. Some workers weren't paid with gold. They were paid with measured portions of grain. Others received clay tablets recording what they were owed. Those tiny pieces of baked clay represented value long before paper money ever existed. In a strange way, money was becoming less about objects and more about information. Then came one of history's biggest breakthroughs. Around the 7th century BCE, in the ancient kingdom of Lydia, located in what is now Western Turkey, someone had an idea that would spread across the world. Instead of weighing pieces of gold every time people traded, why not stamp them? The ruler guaranteed the weight. The ruler guaranteed the purity. Suddenly, trust no longer depended on the seller. It depended on the coin itself. That simple stamp changed everything. Trade became faster. Markets became larger. Empires became richer. Because every successful economy runs on the same invisible resource. Not gold, not silver, trust. And here's the strange part. Thousands of years later, almost none of us use those coins anymore. Think about the last thing you bought. Coffee, groceries, a movie ticket. Did you hand someone a bag of gold? Probably not. Maybe you tapped your phone. Maybe you used a card. Maybe the entire transaction happened online. Nothing physical changed hands. Just numbers moving between computers. In other words, modern money looks far more like ancient trust than ancient coins. Your bank balance isn't valuable because there's a vault somewhere with your name on it. It's valuable because millions of people, banks, businesses, governments, and complete strangers agree those numbers represent real value. The system works for exactly the same reason shells worked, and exactly the same reason rye stones worked. Because enough humans believe they do. That's one of the strangest facts about civilization. Nearly every object around you exists because of physics. Your table, your house, your phone. Money is different. Money exists because of collective imagination. Historian Yuval Noah Harari once described money as one of humanity's most successful shared stories. Whether it's a shell, a gold coin, a paper bill, or a number glowing on your phone screen, the principle never changed. Money is trust you can carry, trust you can store, trust you can send across oceans, trust between people who will never meet. So when did humans first start using money? Not when the first coin was minted, not when the first bank opened, not even when the first civilization appeared. It began the moment humans realized something extraordinary, that an ordinary object could represent an extraordinary promise. A promise that said, I may not know you, but I trust that everyone else will honor this too. That simple idea transformed small bands of hunter-gatherers into global civilizations connected by trade. It built cities, funded exploration, created businesses, powered empires. And today, it still shapes nearly every decision you make, often without you even noticing. The money in your pocket isn't the remarkable part. The remarkable part is that billions of complete strangers wake up every morning and continue believing in exactly the same invisible idea.